I could just leave and go get ice cream, and these three could just restore Christendom and fix all of our issues in 30 minutes. And so that's why we hand-selected each of them. We're living in insane times. You know, Abby's talk was right on the money. Grateful, obviously, for the mean-tweeting orange man versus Jezebel Harris. Like, obviously, between those two, that's not a difficult choice. But perhaps we've been too accommodating of weird gay stuff and the redefinition of the family and baby killing for so long that, like, we don't know what conservatism even means anymore. Maybe when Dave Rubin purchases children, because buying people is legal again, and the conservative media companies celebrate and cheer for motherless children, maybe we don't know what conservatism is anymore. And maybe we have to, like, look in the mirror and start asking some difficult questions about our own movement and our own beliefs. And so this panel is really to discuss kind of like, how did we get here? What's the path forward? Where were the missteps? Are there names and organizations that need to be said? Not out of vitriol, not out of hatred, but out of the desire to inform, equip, and disciple the body of Christ, the local church, into what these solutions actually are. Roe v. Wade's overturned. Woo! It goes back to the states, and there's not a single super red, super Republican majority state in this country that has ended abortion. And it's been 4 years since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. I want you to think about that. So why is that? Who is to blame? And how can we begin to fix this and clean this up in this civilizational moment that I think we all sense we're living in? And so, Abby, your talk was absolutely incredible today. I want you to just be able to speak as freely as you'd like. But where are the fundamental battlegrounds? Where could we actually stand a chance to criminalize and end abortion? And why has it not happened?
I mean, I think it hasn't happened because of the pro-life movement. To be perfectly honest, it hasn't happened because of the pro-life groups that are either, and I want to say, like, some pro-life groups haven't been against the bills, but they've been neutral on the bills, which to me is standing against the bills. If you're not standing for them, then you're standing against them. That's what the Bible says, right? So if you're not for me, you're against me. So if you're not standing for these bills, if you are not standing for these bills, which would make abortion murder, which abortion is murder, abortion is murder, okay? And if you aren't standing for these bills that would make abortion murder, then you are standing against them. You cannot be neutral on abortion being murder. It either is or it isn't. And P.S., it is, okay? So all these pro-life groups that have just stood on the sidelines or have stood neutral on these bills are standing against them. And it is those groups, I'll just use an example in my own state of Texas, we have session after session after session have put forward equal protection bills in the state of Texas, okay? We have 82 Republican state reps in the state of Texas. I could only get 14 to sponsor our equal protection bill in the state of Texas. That is shameful.
Wow.
If they aren't willing to sign on that abortion is murder as a Republican state legislator, they should be primaried out.
That's right.
Like, if you aren't standing with us, then get out, okay? Like, this shouldn't even be controversial. The Republican platform says that abortion is murder. Why are we even messing with these people, okay? So it was in our state, in Texas, the largest pro-life legislative group is a group called Texas Alliance for Life.
Right.
Texas Alliance for Life single-handedly ensured that this bill did not pass. We had every reason for it to pass. Texas Alliance for Life made sure it did not pass.
Wow.
And they are the ones that are hosting the Rally for Life on Saturday in Texas. And I guarantee you the people showing up at the Texas Rally for Life have no idea that the group they're there to support is the one that is keeping abortion legal, or not legal, but keeping abortion accessible and available in their state. It's like a scam, y'all. It's a scam.
Yep.
The organizations, and I added it up, Seth, $132 million. The top 5 organizations, at the top 5 earning pro-life organizations in this country are bringing in $132 million a year. And abortion continues to increase.
Dang.
It's a scam. It's a scam. We should have already ended this thing. For $132 million a year, 10 pregnancy centers to 1 killing center, and abortion continues to increase. Late-term abortions at the highest level ever. And what?
Mm-hmm.
Ineffective.
Right.
Ineffective. That's what we're dealing with right now.
Yes, good. Thanks, Abby. There you go. I mean, it's pretty simple. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of these groups. So there's these state groups that have broken off from National Right to Life. They have different names. You have to do your research. But like sometimes in one state, you'll have like Texas Right to Life, who like I spoke at their gala, and they're like, we need to criminalize abortion. And they said that at their gala to all their constituents. But then you have Texas Alliance for Life, who's working against the equal rights protection. So you have to kind of follow like what these state level groups are, because some of them are beholden to National Right to Life. And so, you know, they buried their testicles in the backyard a long time ago. But then some of them they've broken away from National Right to Life because they're like, National Right to Life is a joke. They're actively working against equal protection for the unborn, so we're going to start our own groups. So it gets complicated. You have to kind of look at all this stuff. But Jason, you've done a lot of work on this at the state level for a long time, running Operation Save America. This guy's like an absolute baller, like 11 children. Like his testosterone rises every new kid he has. Like, one of the most dangerous men in Christendom. It's like, I'm like, dude, you're having babies like a Catholic, but you're a Protestant, dude. I'm like, this is amazing, you know, like really outbreeding the other side. His son's my assistant, you know, anyways. But you fight a lot of this stuff, and you've gone around the country raising your family, seeing up front the battlefield in these states where people that you thought were kind of on your side are like actually not down for that. But it's often justified, Jason, by saying, well, listen, women are victims. They've been lied to. Well, what do you want to criminalize women? Jason, you chauvinist? You know, they were lied to by the abortion industry. We need to win hearts and minds only and not punish mothers who were lied to by the universities or by their lesbian dance theory professor at UC Berkeley. That's mean. Just focus on the heart and don't legislatively punish mothers who kill their children against the law. These are some of the arguments I hear from pro-life establishment folks. But you've been hearing those for a long time. Can you help Christians, believers, warriors like this who are maybe they're new to this conversation of like there's a pro-life establishment that's against protecting babies? Like, walk us through those arguments, those ideas, and how we can think well about that.
Yeah, well, it's ironic that they use the rhetoric that they do, but you know, none of us want to put women in jail. I don't want to put a woman in jail, right? So, you know, you have to sort of unwind the question and reframe the question, right? Don't take the bait when they frame the question in absurd terms, as they often do. And that's not just the pro-abortion side. Say that there's a lot of pro-life groups that do that as well. And so the law does not just function punitively, right? That is a aspect of the law. The law punishes, right? There's a retributive, a justice component to the law. But the law, first and foremost, functions as a deterrent. The law, good law, deters bad behavior, right? So we have good laws. We have laws that punish bad behavior because we value the victims and because we want to deter bad people from doing bad things. And so, you know, I was a juvenile delinquent. I did a lot of bad stuff, shoplifted, stole. I got arrested an awful lot as a juvenile. I remember going through the juvenile courts and you just get slapped on the wrist. I remember turning 18 and I thought, man, I can go to prison. This is a big deal. Like, I need to rethink my life a little bit because I don't want to go to prison. Juvenile detention centers were not a big deal. And so at 18, I had a girlfriend that had an abortion, San Jose, California. I was a lost, wayward juvenile. And her and I, oddly enough, both actually would have identified as pro-life. Wow. But this was before my conversion to Christ, which would have happened about a year later. And she got the abortion because it was so easy, because there was no deterrent. She knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. We knew we shouldn't do this. We knew that she had a baby growing inside of her. It's not rocket science. Now, were people lying to her? Yes. Were people pressuring her? Of course. Was she a victim in some sense? Yeah, we both were. I was raised on gangster rap music, growing up without a father. I was a victim of a lot of things. But it doesn't mean that I should have been given criminal immunity.
Yeah, that's good.
Right? And so we're not the ones that are bringing the mother into the equation. Our laws say nothing about mothers. An equal protection bill doesn't mention mothers. It says simply that anybody that kills a baby in the womb will be held accountable in the same way we would anybody who commits homicide.
Right.
Murder should be illegal for everyone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if it had been illegal 30 years ago in San Jose, California, if it would have been criminal for mother and father to get an abortion, we would not have done it. It would have deterred us, absolutely, and we'd have a baby that would be alive today, and my girlfriend, my former girlfriend, would have been spared the shame and the guilt and the horror of what she went through.
Yeah.
And so we want to criminalize abortion for all parties, not because we hate mothers, right? People say, you're going to put women in jail? Well, what about a woman abortion doctor? A female abortion doctor in Texas, she could go to jail for aborting, for having a surgical abortion on another woman, but she can legally now abort her own child. Female abortion doctors are given total immunity to kill their own children, to perform an abortion on themselves. Tell me that that's logical. Tell me that. And so, look, we can't expect to win. We can't expect to persuade the culture when we're making absurd arguments, when we make capitulations out of fear.
Yep.
Well, that's political suicide. We can't say that. You know what? We're living in a new political era, and I'm thankful, Abby, for everything you said, and I've watched your transition. It's been awesome. I remember you saying, I think 3 or 4 years ago, you put out a video talking about post-COVID, talking about how, you know, you thought it was crazy for states to defy the government over abortion, for governors to push back pre-Roe. And you realized, hey, they were doing it during COVID. DeSantis and Abbott were telling the federal government, no, we're not going to enforce these absurd tyrannical mandates. We're going to stand up to the federal government. Praise God, states have the authority to do that.
Amen.
Well, how much more should they be doing that over abortion? We went
babies,
through 40 years of wandering in the wilderness under Roe, terrified of the giants in the land because pro-life governors, pro-life elected officials were too afraid to stand up to the federal government and say, no,
Good.
we're not going to follow tyrannical, bad federal law. So here we are living in the shadow, but things are changing.
Yep.
We have what we call the Trump effect. I call it the Trumpian effect. Donald Trump said things and did things that people said, you can't do that and win. Trump, for the first time in my political lifetime, stood up, and when he got punched, he punched back. And he changed the whole political landscape as a result of that. Courage and backbone to stand up and say, no, I'm going to say the things that people are thinking, but they're all afraid to say.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening now.
Yep.
Young people want bold leadership.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's what we're here for.
So on all that, we have to turn to, in my opinion, the best Christian cultural commentator on the airwaves today, Steve Deace, obviously.
Pressure.
Absolutely incredible. Do you listen to his show? Unreal. The spirit of the age hates Steve Deace. Let me just tell you that, right? But before we turn to my favorite podcaster, we have a slide up here if you want to ask questions. At the end of this panel, we will have the other Abby come up and kind of direct questions that you type in. And so I believe we have a slide where you can be able to text those in and send those in, and then think about them for the next few minutes, if we're going to put that up. And then we'll get to those at the end. Now, so Steve, one of the things that I've been really appreciative of you for is, as a conservative commentator who addresses like a broad swath of issues, you have made the family issues pretty core to a lot of your commentary, from, you know, the gays getting kids, and the 𝗷𝗵𝗍𝗶𝗃𝗃, my name is Legion Rainbow Cult, and the killing of babies, and all these kind of things as really central civilizational issues. Steve did this incredible long-form dialogue with Dusty Deavers, who's a legislator in Oklahoma, who's pushing a lot of the equal rights protection bills, and you just let him make the case for it. But what we're told, Steve, is we're often told by some people who might even agree with Jason, Abby, and myself that there does need to be some kinds of consequences and penalties for parents who have their children murdered after it's against the law in their state. But then they'll say, Steve, I agree with you, there eventually, sometime in the future, needs to be some kinds of consequences, but not now. That would be political suicide.
First of all, I want to thank Ozempic for sponsoring this panel, because my dad bod is testing this stool. I want you all to know. Clearly, I didn't take enough Ozempic this morning before I came in. So if I casually stand up to stretch, it's to give this thing a break. All right. But in all seriousness, Seth, I think, let me try to add two serious points to what the two distinguished individuals who spoke before me had to say, to give you some reasoning why what they said is true, and why the laments you just heard from Seth in his question to all three of us starts from a correct premise. And one of the things we say on my show a lot is that worldview is destiny, all right? And we have skipped an entire generation of real biblical discipleship in the church. And so what you often end up with, and what we've done instead, and there's a time and a place for topical preaching. I think there's been some great topical series. But when you primarily teach topically and not expositionally, you are acting as an editor of the Bible. That's what you are doing. And so in the Catholic Church, for instance, post-Aquinas, which you have seen, so the Catholics largely are responsible for giving us our concept of natural law. That's what the founders are alluding to when they say things like the laws of nature and nature's God, even though they're post-Enlightenment, post-Reformation. That's a carryover. In the post-Reformation, that natural law was sometimes referred to as common grace, right? Citing the Lord who said the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike, right? All right? That there's a natural restraining force against evil, even in the pagan, unbelieving world. And Romans 1 talks about when God will, it's not that God, because we did bad, that God judges us and removes his restraining hand. It's the other way around. It's because he judges us and removes his restraining hand, and then we do a lot of bad, right? And so this is what the understanding of natural law meant, that there was a higher law that we all had to be held accountable to. There's a great film. The current Nuremberg film isn't bad, but the old one from 1961 is way better. And the character played by Burt Lancaster in that film is a composite of a few Nazi judges. And they were sympathetic to what the Nazis were doing to disparate populations like the Jews. And so what they tried to do was use existing loopholes within Nazi law in order to free people from being sent to the camps. But then, when they ran out of loopholes within existing law, what do you think they did? They said, I'm a strict constructionist, I have to follow the law. And so they sent people to the camps. And they tried to make the case at Nuremberg that they should not have been executed like everybody else, because they basically said, hey, I'm Oskar Schindler. More would have died if I had not made these compromises. Well, you're not Oskar Schindler. Oskar Schindler risked his own life to save as many as he could. That is not the same as what you were doing. You didn't risk anything. The minute there was a risk to you, you stopped trying to save anybody. And so there's a closing scene. Burt Lancaster plays a composite of these judges in the film. And there's a closing scene where Spencer Tracy comes to him as he's about to be hung. And he's the Nuremberg, he's the prosecutor. And he says to him basically, you should have known there was a higher law. Germany is in the heart of Western civilization. It is well aware of what the higher law is. And the higher law says that thou shalt not commit murder. Well, we have skipped an entire generation of this. And so Catholicism now largely is imbued with what's known as legal positivism. It has abandoned natural law, and current Catholic social teaching essentially says legal positivism basically is whatever human institution is recognized as being in charge of the law gets to make the law. So it's completely humanistic in nature. If you're a Protestant, you probably have no freaking idea what I just said at all right? And you come out of an evangelical tradition that can't spell legal positivism, let alone define it for you. So you're so dumb and ignorant, you're not even to this argument yet. And so there is no theological framework convicting the consciences of the leaders that you guys are describing. There's no home church that they would go. It's not a coincidence that many of the people who understand what Seth is talking about come out of very hardcore Reformed churches like Dusty Deavers, because there's still a Protestant evangelical tradition that takes inculcation with expository preaching very seriously, right? You cannot outrun your own worldview. You can't. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Worldview is destiny. You can't believe more than you believe. You just can't. So there's a missing theological convicting component there. Now, that doesn't mean that all of your leaders are victims, though, all right? Because there's another factor working in its way that we operate politically on the right. There's two theories of political activism in Western tradition. One is based on access, and the other is based on leverage. All right? On the left, they practice a leverage-based system. Their base refuses to take no for an answer, and so guess what? It took a while. Like a bunch of them got the crap kicked out of them in the Chicago '68 convention, right? But eventually they got their way. And now, in 1998, Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act into law, making it a national statute that marriage was one man, one woman. Today, you cannot get elected librarian as a Democrat if you don't agree to be in a gay marriage and trans your kids yourself, right? And this is why. Their base practice is a leverage-based process. They understand Lyndon Johnson's axiom that power is where power goes. And so the leadership of that party will bow to that base. On the Republican side, we practice an access-based system, and sometimes you may have heard it referred to as seat at the table. And a lot of the groups that Abby is talking about are seat at the table groups. And we cannot risk our seat at the table. And so essentially what ends up happening is whatever you put at the head of the table is in charge. If the seat of the table is what you are most guided by, then the table you want to sit at is who's actually in charge. And they want a banquet speaker, and they want to know that they're going to have access, and we can't be shunned by the Republican Party. And so that is the difference. In the Democratic Party, all right, the dog wags the tail. And in the Republican Party, the tail wags the dog. And this is why. Now, some of this is unavoidable on our side, because unfortunately we don't have an endless legion of billionaires who are willing to underwrite MSNBC having no ratings to get the message out. This just doesn't exist. And so we have to be a for-profit venture to some degree on the right. It's unavoidable. And we have to make money off of either people who will fund us to say what they want us to say, or off of you. But otherwise, we can't survive. On the right, we have to be an industry as an ecosystem to some degree. But this is why that theological convicting component is so key. And one of the things that I've always tried to do with my show is prove that we can do broad. The Blaze did not hire me to be live from a narrow road, right? The Blaze does not want the slogan of my show to be, "For many are called, but few are chosen." They want the slogan of my show to be, "We're selling more live reads this year than we sold last year." That's what they want the slogan to be. It's a for-profit business. And so there is a way that we can be faithful to the narrow road and still reach a broader audience. But let me tell you, there are things I say no to that if I didn't say no to, I'm just telling you, I'd be a lot wealthier. Right? I make a very good living. We don't complain. But, you know, I think you guys, I'm still living in the same house I lived in 20 years ago. I like that house. It's a nice living. We get to travel the country. We're not wondering where our next meal is coming from. But those are decisions I made because of theological conviction. If I did not have that theological conviction in my mind or in my heart, then I'd make accommodations to grow my brand, to have an even bigger show. And then I'd say, well, I'm doing the best I can, and if I wasn't here to make these compromises, somebody would come after me and make even worse ones. Have you guys heard any of this talk before? And so this is why these dynamics exist on our side. Number one, a lack of theological and worldview training and conviction for a generation. Catholics no longer teach natural law as a default. Protestants don't even know what that is, all right? But they do know that Jesus wants you to have washboard abs like Joel Osteen. You know that, okay? Then, lacking that, we have to be an industry. We have to be a for-profit venture. And so we lack not just the theological will, but the real financial incentive it takes to hold the line on these things and be willing to suffer at least a little bit for what we believe.
Told you. That's like, he's a philosophical doctor. Diagnose the whole problem. It's interesting when you travel the country and you speak to just normal families who love Jesus, and they're trying to be faithful and obedient, raise their children to be little dragon slayers, be involved in their local church. You know who I'm talking about. They don't necessarily go to Life or Death Con and AmFest and March for Life and all these things every year, right? But they're like, I want to end abortion. These are the sweet people who give monthly donations to multi-million-dollar pro-life establishment orgs.
it's interesting by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a multi-million-dollar pro-life organization. I'm just saying, but when you become a coward and you're just looking to maintain your salary and your career rather than putting yourself out of a job, then that's where that becomes a problem. And you talk to just normal believers, and I've tested this. I've told people, did you know that like National Right to Life, Concerned Women for America, the March for Life organization, CareNet, Heartbeat International, Students for Life, the list actually kind of goes on and on and on, have co-signed onto letters written by Susan B. Anthony List. And these letters are sent to state-level legislators in Oklahoma, in Texas, in Louisiana, in North Dakota, where these states were real rock-ribbed conservative state legislators were trying to get an equal rights protection bill passed, which once again, we'll define it for you, apply the same laws that exist to protect infants from being murdered to the unborn baby. And they get a letter from Susan B. Anthony List, SBA, and that's part of the problem. Susan B. Anthony, the woman, was a feminist who did seances in her basement with other feminists and helped with make Elizabeth Cady Stanton's Feminist Bible popular. And anyways, interesting history there. And so they get a letter from Marjorie Dannensfeller, signed by all these pro-life orgs. And I'll summarize the letter for you. Naughty, naughty, conservative Christian state legislator, you naughty, naughty boy, why are you trying to apply the laws that protect infants to the unborn? Don't you know women are victims and should be able to kill their children with legal immunity and legal impunity? This is not what the pro-life movement supports. Shame on you. But when I tell that to a normal evangelical, right, okay, who's they don't live in the culture war all day long, like we, right? They're just trying to make Jesus happy and serve him and put a smile on his face. And they're like, what? I thought the whole point was to end abortion. Like, just normal Christians are horrified when they learn this, when they discover this. So what does that tell you? That the run-of-the-mill Christian has more theological, intuitive clarity than the people being paid to end abortion. C.S. Lewis once said, of all the passions, the passion for the inner ring is most skillful in making a man who is not yet a very bad man do very bad things. A place at the table. Access to the rhino Republican establishment where SBA gets their money from. Upton Sinclair once said, it's almost impossible to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it. And I know it's horrific to have to say this, but what other answer explains the March for Life organization telling Abby Johnson, we will not support your film, which is like former abortion workers telling people what really goes on behind those walls? What else explains that? The March for Life organization telling Abby, we will not support your film in any way, shape, or form. There's no other answer except that you actually don't want to fully end abortion and criminalize it for everyone so we can stop the bloodshed. And maybe the Lord will start answering our prayers to bless America again. So it's a very important conversation. Make sure you guys get your questions in just 1 second. Abby, I want to ask you something. I've asked a lot of friends this, both post-abortive mothers and fathers, and it's a very simple question. If abortion was a criminal act at the time you got your abortion, would you have done it?
No, I wouldn't have done it. And if I wouldn't have had my first abortion was what led me to the Planned Parenthood booth on my college campus, right? And if I wouldn't have had my first abortion, I wouldn't have ever gone to work for Planned Parenthood. And my work with Planned Parenthood led to 22,000 babies being killed under my watch. So now I live with that, with knowing that I helped to murder 22,000 babies. And yeah, like I know God has forgiven me. I know that. I know that. I know. I know that my sin is cast as far as the east is from. I know that. But when you've helped to murder 22,000 babies and 2 babies of your own, like, I help piece these babies back together with my own hands. Like, when your eyes have seen that, when your hands have touched it, when you've smelled what abortion smells like when you've heard the suction noise, when you've lived this life, there will be earthly consequences for me for the rest of my life until I meet Jesus. And that's wiped away. I have diagnosable PTSD that I'll live with for the rest of my life. If I want to prepare a meal for my family, it can't be red meat. I can't handle red meat. I can't handle a steak. Because it reminds me of all the dead babies, all that blood. I can't. I'll have a panic attack right there in the middle of my kitchen. That's weird, right? That's weird. I don't think anybody else in here probably has a panic attack when they open up a package of steaks, but that's my life. And that's just that's an earthly consequence for my sin. I know God's forgiven me, but there are consequences to our actions. And you know what? There should be. There are consequences to our sin. And I just want to say, I wasn't always here in my mind. You know? When I first got into the pro-life movement, I was just so thankful to be here. You know? I was like, oh my gosh, thanks everybody. Thanks for letting me come to the table, right? Thanks for letting me be here. And so when these pro-life organizations told me, Abby, this is what you believe women are victims, okay? This is what you believe. I was like, okay. Because I've believed the wrong thing for so long. I believed the wrong thing for 8 years, so you tell me what to believe. And I'll believe it. And so I did. So I believed what they told me to believe. Because I didn't know. I had been so lost for so long. But something for years, kept eating at me. This just doesn't feel right. How can this be consistent? How is this consistent? This doesn't feel right to me. But, the movement kept telling me, no, it's right, Abby. They're victims. I know it's murder sometimes, it's not murder some other times, but it's just, Abby, this is what it is. Just believe it, okay? We're telling you, just believe it. And then one day I was like, dang. I went from being a puppet from one industry to being a puppet in another industry.
Dang.
And I was like, God, you need to help me find my voice. You need to help me find what I believe.
That's good.
What is it that you believe, God? I need you to help me find what you believe. Actually, it's not actually about me at all. God, I need you to help me, seek your face,
Yeah.
And it was it was fast. I mean, if you ask God to reveal something, man, he'll do it,
It's good.
And then I had to come down on the side of equal protection. And I hated that, man, because I hated the abolitionists. And they hated me. And we had been real mean to each other for all those years, They had done some real crap stuff to me, too. Cruel. I mean, they had depicted me as the Virgin Mary standing on a pile of dead babies.
I remember that.
They had been ugly to me. Not winsome, okay? Not winsome.
I'd add not wisdom either.
And not wisdom. And I did not want to side with them. And I was like, God, if this is what you want me to do, you've got to really help me humble myself and swallow some pride here and just say, thy will be done.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about people and persons and personalities. This is about the Lord.
That's right. That's right.
Can I, Abby, since you went there, I want to add something. So people pay me money, and not insignificant amounts, to help them communicate and message things. And I'm going to just be can I just be brutally honest, Seth?
Yep.
Abolitionists are going to win this argument because the mainstream pro-life movement has no plan. They have no plan to victory. That's why they're not going anywhere. All right? Their plan is to work with Lindsey Graham on some 15-week bill and essentially do a Republican incumbent protection racket. And it's not going anywhere. Why? Because Trump recognizes that the emperor has no clothes. He doesn't have to bow the knee to these people at all, that he's more popular with their base than they are, that he's already given, you guys, he defeated Roe, he kept his promise, he did, okay? And he did his job. And he's not expending any more political capital on this issue, and he has no respect for your pro-life leaders at all, and that's why it's not going anywhere. So, but why haven't you guys actually won yet? And I'm just going to tell you, and this is coming, keep in mind now who this is coming from, all right? I've seen very few throats I did not at least once want to punch, all right, working in politics. But too much of the abolitionist messaging, you just heard this from Abby. It's terrible, frankly. And you are delaying the off-ramp for people like Abby, who instinctively knew I'm in a movement that's not going anywhere and can't win.
Yeah.
But some of the messaging is so just ridiculously over the top that you are compelling a layer of people who would already be in this room with you to dig in their heels all the more, because you're making them feel like, if I don't feel all the work I thought I was doing all these years, where I thought I was doing the right thing, instead makes me twice the candidate of hell than the abortionist himself is, and I don't hate every single person yet that doesn't agree with me on this, all right? And I think that frankly is a losing tactic. And more babies, I frankly think, are being killed because you're taking too long to win an argument. You're inevitably going to win. All you need to do to convince consciences like Abby's and others, ask a simple question. And by the way, when you use those tactics, you put the emphasis on you. You want to put the emphasis on the mainstream pro-life movement. They're the ones that have failed to win this issue for 50 years. Ask a simple, what did Jesus do to deconstruct false ideologies? He asked questions. Simple question. What's your plan to end abortion once and for all? When do we get there? How long do you think it'll take? Here's our plan. Take it to the base and say, which one do you think best represents what you think? Or you can pull stunts. And since I'm riffing and on a roll, I'm just going to lay it out there. Some of you abolitionists, and I say this as a Reformed theology guy, some of you abolitionists need to decide, do you want to just be really good John Calvin impersonators? Or do you want to freaking end abortion once and for all? And because I'm just telling you, choose one. Choose one. Do you want to prove presuppositional apologetics in the 8th book of Calvin's Institutes in the Christian Religion is true? Or do you want to end abortion? Which one is it? Because some of your tactics I frankly just find utterly ridiculous. And I wasn't going to say anything when I came all the way to bring this up. But since she brought it up, it's this woman you gave me, it's her fault. All right? Since she brought it up, I've got like 2 years of pent-up frustration I just needed to unload. All right? Because I would like to end abortion. Some of you want to prove a point. Or do you want to end abortion? Amen. There's lots of people in legislatures who feel like Abby, who are tired of taking heat for not accomplishing anything and want to end this, but you're needlessly alienating them.
Yep.
Just walk up, here's our plan to end abortion. What is yours? We just want to end this. What is it? Tell us how we end this then. How do we get there? How long will it take?
Amen.
This is our plan. Do you think it's better than ours?
Yep, it's good. Good, there, Steve. All right, last call. We'll use the time we have, and we'll get through as much as we can. If we don't get to your question, I'm sorry. Last chance to put it in there. Steve, absolutely beautiful. Everyone go subscribe to the Steve Deace Show. Abby, Why don't you take away the questions?
Oh my gosh, how are you guys feeling after that? Are you ready?
I feel a lot better. Thank you.
Round of applause for these warriors, for these heroes in the pro-life movement and in Christendom who are leading the charge, leading the way. For those of us who are Gen Z, we have some pretty large shoes to fill and follow after. So pay attention. We got a lot of questions, so this is kind of rapid fire. We'll get to yours if we can. Question 1 from Charles to anyone. Best thing a young man can do to get involved in ending abortion today?
The guy with 11 kids?
Yeah, join the White Rose, join the resistance, get plugged into a local state chapter, or get connected to the activism team, and go to the website, go to thewhiterose.life, and look at the activism chapters. 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 runs that, and awesome guy that's hitting it hard on the front line. So get plugged into to guys in your local community. The second thing is just start doing hard things. You have to just start doing the difficult things that are not being done. And to the points that these two made that are phenomenal, and just to put an exclamation point on it, there is a theological crisis that is at the root of this, right? You have to be grounded in Christ as a young man, right? We are Christ first, and when we don't stand firmly upon Christ and the gospel, then we lose our moral authority, we lose our moral clarity, we lose our moral courage, and so what is desperately needed in our day is courage. Right? And so I applaud the abolitionists for their displays of courage. I do not applaud the many abolitionists for their poor wisdom, right? But we need courage. And then we need to be able to actually do the hard things. And oftentimes what that is on this issue, it is holding our elected officials accountable.
That's it, yeah.
So, to Steve's point earlier, we don't play the access model. The access model is how we get played. Lindsey Graham will tell you how great of a Christian he is, how much he wants to end abortion. He'll tell you what the Bible studies that he goes to, and he'll say, Steve, you know my heart, brother. You know I'm up here and I got a hard job. So
I feel very uneasy about Lindsey Graham putting his hand on me. Like
a man named Lindsey to begin with, but Lindsey Graham is being primaried right now by a phenomenal guy named Mark Lynch that we've spent a lot of time with. Mark Lynch needs people, he needs Christians to get out and support him. So, we need to stop supporting bad Republicans who make excuses for why they can't do their job. We need to do the hard, difficult work of running actual grassroots campaigns. We need to figure out how campaigns actually work, okay? Making Facebook posts is fun. Showing up at conferences is great. Talking about these things is wonderful, but you need to get out in your community, knock doors.
Yeah.
Be a part of a campaign. Find somebody who's running an awesome primary challenge against one of these bad guys. Get involved in their campaign. Devote your time and energy. Take off a Saturday to go knock doors. Put money into that, right? We complain about the bad guys in office, but then when good guys run, we don't show up and we don't support them, right? Politics is about doing the work. I've run a construction business for 20 years, and I can give all the spiritual sounding excuses if I don't do a job properly. Oh, but pray for me. I'm sorry I didn't finish your floor, but just pray and have enough faith. Maybe the hole in the floor will get figured out, Just have enough faith and believe God, and I did my job, so, my intentions were in the right place. None of that works when you're actually doing real work in the real world, and we spiritualize our failure, we spiritualize our incompetence, and we need to stop doing that. Politics takes real nuts and bolts, grassroots work, and as the church, we have to be able to do that. That is spiritual, it's acts of worship, and we need to do it with excellence. We can win politically. The system works, we just don't know how to use it. So get involved in a political campaign. After you join the White Rose, start doing activism, get involved in a political campaign in your local community.
Yeah, all I'll add is, it was a young man question. Don't look at porn, and if you are, put your mother or sister on the Covenant Eyes accountability browsing report that gets sent out of the websites you go to, and do whatever's necessary to chop that sin off, or your integrity, your voice, and your witness will be destroyed. And if you continue, you'll eventually become gay. No, like literally, the longer you do it, yeah. So that's a big part of it. For young men to getting involved in the fight and exercising courage. You can't tear down the Asherah poles and Moloch idols of our day when you have them erected in your own living room. Next question.
Yeah, this one's from Donald for anyone. Do you believe we can work with the pro-life organizations that are not working to outlaw abortion on what we do agree on?
Defensively, these ballot amendments, that's one example. Yeah, we should, but...
Yes. But I think it has to be very specific, and you have to articulate what is the premise that is being advanced here. So this has gotten very divisive in my home state of Iowa, and I have friends on both sides of this. And so I spoke at the largest gathering we have of activists in my home state last summer, about 1,100 conservative, hardcore, Christian, conservative, pro-life activists there. And what I tried to do as best as I could is to lay some ground rules for this debate. See, one of the things you guys have been told is that we're arguing too much. I completely disagree. We have actually just started arguing, okay? I mean, like Michael Knowles and Mike Huckabee going back and forth the last few days on X over whether or not this iteration of Israel is prophetic. That is a great example of an actual argument. What we've been doing is just kind of trolling each other, memeing each other, and mean-girling each other. That's not an argument, you know? And so what I try to do as someone who has a lot of friends on each side is to lay the ground rules for the argument. Does this piece, and so this was my ground rule, does this piece of legislation lead to the end of the killing? Does it get us to the end game we all say we want? Everybody here and not here, we all say what we want is we want to end this. Does this piece of legislation get us to that point? Make the argument that it does. Make the argument that it does. Let's hear it. And that's how I would handle that.
I would say maybe. I wouldn't say yes, we can work with all of them. I would say at the end of the day...
I don't think we can work with all of them. Let me make that very clear.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Steve. I think at the end of the day, if their mission is to truly abolish abortion and end abortion and criminalize abortion, then yeah. But I think we have a whole lot of organizations that are very, very publicly, even today, on social media saying, we're never going to criminalize abortion, our organization doesn't believe in that, women are always victims, blah, 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 saying the same things that I used to say, by the way, that are saying that old, tired narrative that nobody really believes anymore. Because it's really hard to believe that every woman is a victim that's having an abortion when you're scrolling through TikTok and these women are having abortion parties. It's super hard to believe that women are victims when you're scrolling through TikTok and you see a woman cutting a cake that says, instead of "it's a boy," they scratched out "boy" and wrote "it's aborted." It's super hard to believe that every single woman is a victim when you're looking around and this woman is wearing a t-shirt that said, "I've had 15 abortions." Like, it's really hard to believe that every woman is a victim when I myself go out and pray in front of abortion clinics. Like, I don't know how many of you do that, but if you do, you can understand where I'm coming from right now. But I actually do the activism work. And when I go out in front of these abortion facilities and I'm standing there and these women are walking out and they're walking in, I'm trying to reach out to them and they're looking at me and they're laughing and they're dancing to music and they're flipping me off and they're saying, "I can't wait to murder this effing kid." Like, you can't convince me that that woman is a victim. You can't convince me that every woman is a victim when over 60% of the women who are walking in to have abortions have already seen the ultrasound of that baby they're about to murder and heard that heartbeat.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry, but no.
Yep.
Like, the victim mentality is done. Women are either smart and capable and strong and amazing and able to overcome any challenge they can, or they're dumb, weak, idiot fools.
Yep.
But it's one or the other, and I choose to believe that women are incredible, and we are smart, and with time comes wisdom, and we can overcome these barriers and these challenges.
Yep.
And we can read through a freaking document that tells us if you have an abortion, you may hemorrhage to death, or if you have an abortion, you're gonna see your freaking baby in the toilet. So beware.
Right.
Like, I choose to believe that we're smart enough to understand that.
Yep.
And that we're not victims. Because I've had 2 abortions, and I was not a victim. I was selfish. Women choose abortions out of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Stop believing that they're having abortions because every single woman that has an abortion is some, I don't know, damsel in distress or something.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just a lot.
So yeah, are you working with principled people or not principled people? Ironically, feminism has brought back chauvinism because chauvinism has a low view of women and thinks they're stupid and should be their sex toys, and now the feminists have brought back the belief that women are stupid and can't make their own decisions and don't have moral accountability, and so feminism is male chauvinism dressed differently, and that's really funny how that worked out. But next question.
Well, this is from Maddie for Seth. It says, how can we be the most effective in combating and eventually eliminating abortion if we live in a state like Maryland that has enshrined abortion as a constitutional right and allows babies to be murdered at any stage of pregnancy?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe the Lord will give us a Christian prince as president and then just federally ban abortion in all 50 states. So let's just pray for that, but it's probably not likely to happen anytime soon. I mean, can you imagine if Gavin Newsom is president in like 2028 or something? You know what I'm saying? So like, this is why Trump is a tourniquet, not a savior. And it's gonna require like a long-term vision and a long obedience of faithfulness in the right direction to turn things around in these deep blue states. My home state, where we moved, but my home state's California, is one of those states that codified abortion through point of birth into the state constitution. Barring like an act of God and like this like incredible revival, which could happen, like that's possible. But barring that, it's going to take probably decades, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how mobilized and awakened and salty the local church is, to reverse states like Maryland and California. I wish I could just be like, the Lord's gonna wake up every church and just name it and claim it, and the praises go up and the blessings come down, and just put on another Joel Osteen sermon and just take back Maryland for Jesus. It's like, that's probably not gonna happen. Like, you're gonna need to contend for righteousness for a really long time. Some of this gets into like, can we even trust our elections, which is like not something we have time for. Like, I don't trust them in California, but conversation for another time. Every state has such a radically different battlefield now. Every battlefront looks so insanely different. But I will say this, we're living in a civilizational moment where we're either on the cusp of another great awakening and revival that will be America's new birth of freedom, or we're on the cliffside of despotism. And if we fall off that cultural cliff, and I'll talk about this in my talk tonight, you won't climb back out. There are such things as civilizational moments and cultural cliffs, and historically, like once you go off the deep end, like you get a Napoleon. Like that's it. We're flirting with that cultural cliff. So either we'll wake up and give God a reason to show America mercy, and we'll do the hard kingdom work of saving babies outside of we've shut down 2 abortion mills in the last like 14, 15 months, which is nothing compared to what Abby does, obviously. But these are local evangelical Christians awakening and starting to exercise stewardship in their counties. If that starts to become the norm in some of our cities in deep blue states, that could be a true revival. Like, you could even see some of the blue states start to flip for life and liberty, but everything is about the local church. So whoever asked that, you contend for righteousness in Maryland, and you invite others to come with you. You follow Jesus, and you just say, all right, come here, come on, cowards, come with me, and see what the Lord does in your state.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, this one is from Andrew for Steve. He says, if you attend a church where a pastor has no stomach for addressing political or moral issues, would you confront him in love before looking for another church, similar to how Bonhoeffer confronted Bishop Huckel?
I like how everybody looked at me with that question, but...
It was for you. It was for you.
Oh, was it?
Oh, yeah, it was for you.
I think it depends on how well you know that pastor. How long have you been there? But like I talked about earlier this afternoon, we've had several sifting or tipping point moments. And if your pastor, so we've got the scamdemic, we've got BLM, we've got trainee madness, and we've got the most viewed murder in human history, which happened while a guy was communicating and evangelizing the gospel. All right? I mean, to quote the great prophet Moses Malone, that's faux, faux, faux. Okay? I mean, if that guy's 0 for 4, if that guy is 0 for 4, I don't know. I mean, nothing's impossible with God, but it's probably impossible at that point with you. All right? So, I not cast pearl into swine. You were made to be in a church that disciples and equips you. The duty of the church is to equip the disciples for the work of the ministry. That's what the church is.
Yep.
You are worthy of a church that does that for you. Yes. Leave.
Yeah.
And then you want to continue to pray for them, that someone else, that maybe the fifth tipping point might be the one that God uses to wake them up. Great. But to continue to sacrifice your own family's spiritual growth and equipping on that altar, that's the equivalent of, I'm going to send my 7-year-old to the government schools as an evangelist. Right? That's kind of the equivalent of that. That's dumb. Yeah, don't do that.
That's dumb, yeah.
All right, we have time for one more question. This is from Addison for Seth. How can I, as a Christian, confront the issue of IVF with Christians who still believe it's a solution to infertility?
Oh, goodness, in 2 minutes. Okay.
Good luck.
I have an episode on my podcast, The Seth Gruber Show, that I gave to the David Barton Pro-Family Legislative Conference in November in Texas to state legislators from 33 states. I spoke for about 55 minutes, so it's a whole talk on my podcast. I forget what it's called. Feminism gave us transgenderism or something like that. But it's on my podcast if you want like the whole lecture on IVF, big fertility. But yeah, I've lost donors because I went after IVF on my show because I keep having 𝗀𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃 on my show over and over again because that woman just spits fire every time she speaks. And so listen, if you're pro-life, okay, so how do you do it without ostracizing pro-lifers? I mean, there's just basic questions and facts that most pro-life people who are like, save the unborn, like just don't know about big fertility. And that's really what we're talking about when you talk about IVF. And so, factoid for everyone, did you know that about 93% of the babies conceived through IVF will never be born? Only 7%, if I'm doing my math right, I was homeschooled, of the babies conceived through IVF will be born. Does that sound like a child-friendly process? So either they're perpetually frozen. We have about 1 million souls on ice right now. Call me crazy, but as a pro-lifer, I have this crazy belief that humans have a right to not be frozen. It's really weird. And then not all of the children will pass the eugenics test. They won't be up to scruff. Not all of them will be the right gender that the parents hoped for. Of those that are frozen, not all of them will survive the thawing process. And then because most parents create multiple embryos, right, because you're attempting implantation. And so rather than sending up one of those babies into mom, you send up 5 or 6 and hope one implants. So those other siblings become sacrificial lambs on the altar of your fertility. That's not synonymous with sexual intercourse, where like how many babies, it's up to God. No. What you're doing is you're creating a bunch of children because you know it's unlikely that one sent up mom will implant, so let's send up 6, and those siblings become sacrificial lambs. Also, the estimates are that about twice as many babies lose their lives every 12 months through IVF or big fertility as lose their lives through abortion.
Yeah, can I just say too, like we have, and then there were none. We've actually we've decided to kind of, we didn't mean to, but we've started having these former embryologists and big fertility doctors come through our ministry. And that was something we didn't expect, right? Because we're abortion industry people,
wow,
right?
Interesting.
We're like abortionists and abortion nurses and things like that, right? But we started having these fertility doctors contact us.
Wow.
And these embryologists, so the people who are actually taking the egg and the sperm and putting them together and looking at it through a microscope and doing the gene testing and stuff like that, right? These people contacting us. And they're saying, look, I know I'm not an abortionist, but I mean, I kind of am. And they're like, so can we get help through your ministry too?
Whoa.
And so now we have testimonies from these former embryologists and these former IVF doctors. And I want to say this because there's probably people in here who are like, oh, but I know people who did IVF the moral way. And that means we only fertilize as many eggs as we were going to use. And I just want to blow that out of the water really quick. And this may be you sitting in here, and I'm sorry if you have to hear this for the first time, but I just want to let you know that that actually doesn't exist. Every single former IVF doctor, every single former embryologist that we have had come through our ministry and 2 of them worked at Christian IVF clinics who promised that they did moral IVF. They promised these women and men, these Christian women and men, that they did moral IVF, that they would only fertilize as many eggs as they were going to implant. And these embryologists and these Christian doctors are telling us that's a lie. That there's actually no way for them to do that because they would never have an embryo to implant. Because the process is that you have to have so many because they discard so many. And they're not willing to do an ovulation harvest. They're not willing to do this harvest, this egg harvest, and not fertilize at least 12 to 15.
Wow.
But they're lying to you, and they're telling you they're only going to fertilize like 2 or 3. But they're actually fertilizing like anywhere from like 12 to 20. And then they pick out the very best ones. They grade them in A, B, C categories. And if you have, at least 3 A's, then you'll never get a B implanted. C's are always trashed. If you have 3 A's, all B's are trashed. They only want A's, and they only want the best A's. And they can even sort your A's by like hair color, eye color, whatever you want. That's when they can start getting designer if you have a bunch of A's.
Yeah.
Guys, this is real.
Yeah, it's sick.
There's no moral way to abuse natural law.
Yeah, that's right. That's well said. Yeah,
That's
eugenics is alive and well. So Katie Faust at Them Before Us is a great ministry. If you want more information on that, I've had her on my show like 5 or 6 times. Yeah, good?
That's all we have time
Yeah.
for. Guys, how was that? Amazing.